Yeah, I can click
Here it
share.
goes. Share, right?
Ta-da! Thank you. Yeah, you just gotta click present in the top right.
The top right. Okay.
Yeah, I can click
Here it goes. Share, right?
Great. Ta-da! Thank you. Yeah, you just gotta click present.
On YouTube. Someone just clicked it to be on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sharing it to YouTube. All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for sitting through those technical difficulties there at the beginning. I'm Nate Smith. I am a co-curator and co-founder of the Sixth Festival. This is our very first year of events. This is our second week. We're heading into our last weekend, and I'm very, very excited for this one. We have had 25 events this year, all free, all over Chicago, 8 in person and the rest on Zoom. We are named after the 6th mass extinction event that most scientists paying attention agree is already well underway, which is very, very alarming news. But it also leaves us plenty of room to dream pretty big. It's the most terrifying thing I've ever learned, and it's also the most invigorating and hopeful, and that is the idea behind the action series that we are now sitting in this meeting. Extinction Rebellion is a local action group, and we've also got the Alliance of the Southeast with us tonight. Awesome hunger striker joining us at the last minute to make this a really, really great event. So without further, I do want to acknowledge that the festival is happening on the lands of a number of native tribes that the land was stolen from. One of those tribes is the Ojibwe, and their fight against Pipeline 3 is currently underway. Instead of just making a land acknowledgement where we're saying what land was taken from somebody as though it was just a story of the past, imperialism is a thing of the present and is happening in Minnesota with the expansion of an oil pipeline, just like the Dakota Access Pipeline. So if you would like to learn more about the Ojibwe's fight, they're trying to protect the last naturally growing wild rice on Earth that they've been harvesting and living with and from for over 8,000 years. And that's going to be demolished by the pipeline. And if that pipeline oil gets into the air, then carbon in our atmosphere is going to be greatly accelerating the crisis that affects every single person and form of life on this planet. So check out stopline3.org and honortheearth.org. I'll be putting that in the chat. I'm now happy to pass the mic over to Extinction Rebellion, who was at the very, very first meeting of this festival before I even knew it was going to be this festival, and has been a huge inspiration for helping me understand the crisis and what to be done about it, because they're all about doing something. So I'm excited to pass the microphone over to Mary, who's going to start off the event for us. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, everyone else who's joined us. I just want to give a little brief history of what XR is for those who don't know. It began in a small town in England with about 15 people who decided to embark on a campaign of civil disobedience to change the discourse on the climate and ecological emergency. So in October 2018, they declared a rebellion against the government in the United Kingdom. And the idea actually started spreading quite widely around the world. So in April of 2019, this was the kind of the first phase of what they refer to as the International Rebellion, and began with actions that took place in the US, Pakistan, the Netherlands, Austria, Ghana, and Chile, just to name some. And that same month in the UK, rebels shut down 5 iconic locations in central London, including Oxford Circus, Marble Arch, Waterloo Bridge, Piccadilly Circus. And they stayed for 10 days, blocking roads, shutting things down, with the intention of causing as much economic disruption as possible. So at this point, over 1,000 people were arrested, and several members of the group were invited to meet with senior politicians. And the following day, the UK became the first country in the world to declare a state of climate and ecological emergency. So the gist of it is that the climate crisis and the associated crises of capitalism and colonialism that caused it will not be solved by gradual reform. The scope of the problem requires a radical change. And XR defines itself as a decentralized mass movement of concerned inhabitants of the planet. And the work is to transform society into one that is compassionate, inclusive, sustainable, equitable, and connected. And we see ourselves as one part of a much larger, wider, stronger, noisier, wiser movement. And in the US, we have these 4 demands. And the first one, the previous slide showed a banner that we dropped last week for Earth Day, one of 3, that says, "Tell the truth, climate emergency." Yeah, there it is. This was over the Dan Ryan last week. And if you tell the truth and declare a climate emergency, then you have to act on that. And the goal for XR is to have net zero emissions by 2025. One of the other things that makes the goal, the demand for assemblies of everyday people to oversee what a transition to a carbon-free economy would be. So randomly chosen people from all walks of life would get together and come up with the ideas that would make this happen. And last, but certainly not least in our demands, is that the needs of those who have been most affected by the crisis so far should be the top priority. So each one of these things kind of leads into the next, but the whole group of them is really the driving force of the group. So just one last thing I'd like to say that I think is an important part of XR is that there is an emphasis on regenerative culture to feature the idea that we can imagine a better future. So in one sense, maybe our problem is that it's been a complete failure to imagine something different from the current status quo. So our idea for regenerative culture is an attempt to try and imagine that better future. So I'd just like to leave you with a quote from George Orwell, which I think sums it all up. "In times of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." It's kind of one world or no world. So the need is urgent. The time to get going is right now. So these pictures here with the wheelbarrows of mud, well, I guess it's playing the part of the bullshit, but this is an action that took place last week. XRDC dumped these loads out in front of the White House for Earth Day. So I thank you, and I will now turn it over to Ivy.
Hi, everyone. So as we know, there's a climate emergency is really because of centuries of colonization and extraction, and white supremacy and profit motives mean that the earth and the people in it have been treated as expendable. So we're left with pollution, and climate catastrophe is just a part of that. And the climate emergency is a popular issue in Chicago. Our city council just a year ago unanimously passed a bill to declare a climate emergency. and then they didn't do anything. So our strategy means we have to keep pressuring for a decisive and just course of action. And that means that the frontline communities, who are the poor and the marginalized, and are often bearing the brunt of the pollution, while the wealthy and white neighborhoods usually have more political power and they can ensure better living conditions for themselves. So we know that there can't be climate justice until there's racial justice. And I would like the next slide, please. Barry, so Barry can speak quickly about the meaning of the next two slides.
Well, our theme here is pretty simple. I'll just go back for a moment if I can. Sorry, I've been having some trouble trying to figure out how to control the
That's
slides.
okay. So here we
Or
are.
somebody else controlling them? Well, should I just speak to the slide? Oh, so Extinction Rebellion believes that justice needs direct action, that protests in if you will, capitalist society for issues that are not of interest to the power structure generally leads nowhere. So this picture is from Logan Square on April 17th. There are thousands of people in Logan Square remembering Adam Toledo and, there to demand justice, and nothing has happened. So next slide, if somebody else has got the slide control, or it must be me, but why? Or try like that. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I was saying that justice needs direct action, but there are different types of justice. And so what we'd like to put out to you today is that climate justice, this justice for the earth, is impossible without environmental justice, because in so many cases, the largest pollution sources are located near frontline communities of color. And so by addressing their situation, we are addressing climate justice. Then further, environmental justice is not possible without racial justice, because lack of racial justice enables environmental injustice. If people aren't respected for the simple safety on the street, how are they going to be respected for what they breathe? Right? So, and then as I was saying before, some kinds of problems simply cannot be solved through the legislative system. So no justice without direct action.
Okay.
And back to Ivy.
Okay, thank you, Barry. So coming back to Chicago racial justice and environmental justice issues, Chicago is actually one of the top 5 most segregated US cities. And so that means that we're basically a tale of two cities, where the more affluent white neighborhoods have greater access to city services, more parks, and they rely on cleaner air and water, while the predominantly Black and brown South and West Side neighborhoods experience economic disinvestment, worse air quality, higher asthma rates, lower life expectancy, and they just in general have less of a voice in government decisions. And policing is one of the ways that this unjust system is entrenched. We have over policing, we have racist treatment, we have CPD brutality, police murder, and those are daily facts of life in some parts of the city that are never seen in other parts. Chicago has a notorious police budget that's way out of scale, and it takes away from the schools and city services that we need. And it's also really linked to high rates of gun violence, the disinvestment, and the over policing. So XR Chicago, we supported CPAC, the Civilian Police Accountability Council bill, And now it is called Empowering Communities for Public Safety. And it is driven by a coalition behind the two earlier bills. So this is a unity bill. And I have a petition for folks in the chat to voice your support for it. It's the People's Ordinance for Police Accountability in Chicago. And we really want to get that passed because, again, from our perspective, the high volume of our budget that goes to police means that the city is not investing in environmental programs, it's not investing in climate adaptations, and it's certainly not investing in our Southside neighborhoods, and it's not listening to any of us. So another problem that's really notorious in Chicago is that developers have so much power in our government, and it often leads to decisions made for someone else's profit and against the wishes of our communities. And we've seen that even the regulatory agencies like the Chicago Department of Public Health, they not only don't listen to the communities, but they can be complicit. They can be complicit when an industry is clearly in violation and clearly dangerous. The regulatory agencies are supposed to stop those companies from getting permits. And we have seen the Chicago Department of Public Health has looked the other way again and again. So we feel that it's urgent, not only just for climate change, but just for the sake of humanity, it's urgent to use direct action for solidarity with our neighbors. And only direct action can apply popular pressure to get our community voices heard over the wealthy lobbyists. And no justice can happen without bringing these demands forward. Collectively, we need to grow our movements and work together. And so we're really proud. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so we are really proud. We have been following this issue with the campaign to stop General Iron's relocation. And we are super excited to have with us today Oscar, who is one of the people who took direct action and put his own safety on the line. So welcome and thank you, Oscar. And these are two articles that I have found that people can get some background issues. Oh, I saw Oscar was muted. There you go. Thank you, Oscar.
Great, thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. Hola, hola. My name is Oscar Sanchez. I go by he, him, his, and I'm an organizer, youth and violence prevention organizer of Alliance of the Southeast. And I just want to say it's amazing that folks are taking these issues very serious. And I say this because when you organize, we organize for our survival. And I want to really emphasize the impact of these industries in Black and brown communities, in poor communities, in low income communities, in working class communities. It is truly for survival. Here in the Southeast side, when this campaign started to stop General Iron, before this new polluter was looking to come to our area, we have about 70 industries, right? We have 70 different operations happening that are killing us. And we didn't find this number by asking the city, because we did ask the city, and this was asked by the Southeast Environmental Task Force. They asked, how many industries are here? And the city said, we do not have the funds to investigate, and we do not have the time. So we had to take it upon ourselves, working with a local university, University of Illinois at Chicago, through the CASH program, program to really investigate how many operations, and we came up with the number of 70. So we had 70 different operations that are causing contamination and pollution in our community, and we did not want one more. Now, the background of General Iron is a company on its own that is from an affluent white neighborhood, north side, Lincoln Yards, and it is coming to the south side of Chicago, the southeast side, in an affluent, Black and brown community. So it's really a question of why is this happening, and why is it happening in a very streamlined fashion? Why is it happening in such a manner that is so fast and rapid, as if it was already directed for this to happen, and with the designation and with the utmost priority for the city and the developers? Because again, when politicians look at this, they look at $1.6 billion going to this community in the north side and nothing coming to our community. So they're looking to develop that area and prioritize that area that already has plenty of money and income from the local residents. And you just think of our area. You think of our folks in need. You think of anything that during a pandemic, a time where people are looking to survive, we shouldn't worry about another polluter coming in and killing us. We talk about folks, literally, we have funerals for our folks that have respiratory issues. We have folks that were part of the Coalition to Ban Pepco campaign, and some of them have already passed away because of the COVID. And it is something very depressing and saddening. But what we always keep in mind, and what always helps us and grounds us and gives us hope, is that we keep us safe. And that's why we keep fighting. So this all started back in where we started doing really civil actions is last year, after all the civil disobedience that we've done in commemoration and solidarity with Black Lives Matter. We said that we have to protect ourselves from environmental racism and want accountability from our local officials. Our local alderwoman, Susan Garza, was not speaking up for the community. So a lot of youth groups and new organizations, for example, myself with ASE, SIA, UN10, United University 10th Ward, and Bridges and Puentes, we said, we need to go and approach the alderwoman. And it was informal action. We said, let's come out and we're going to go. We didn't tell anybody we were going to go. We didn't make it fly. These are the groups that we want to go, and we're going to go and speak what we needed to talk about. And then from there, we had conversations with the EJ groups that we invited as well with CDF, and we created a stronger bond with them. And we created a stronger bond with the Coalition about Pepco. And from there, we said, let's be strategic. What is our plan? We want to deny this permit. So how do we do that? And let's do the civil way, right? Civil way. And let's go through town halls. So we organized people to show up to the town hall meetings continuously from July all the way into the end of the year. So there was about 200 individuals that would show up to every town hall meeting. And in the final one, we had over 500 individuals that were saying, deny the permit. During that time, we were doing the civil acts, but we're also doing teach-ins. We're doing rallies. We're doing marches. We kept doing protests. We ended up showing to Mayor Lori Lightfoot's home in November. And beforehand, we showed again to Susan Garza's home. Again, it's about accountability and truly looking at every single means of doing this. And in December, the city sent a letter saying, a deficiency letter to the public, right? Saying, General Iron needs to address these items, and if they don't, obviously they're not going to be given the permit. That was in the last week of December. And then 2 weeks later, it was Friday, it was the final day for public commentary, and the city says, hey, we're going to give you one more week because General Iron, owned under RMG, has now given us a new application, and we want you to review it. The first application was 256 pages. The new revised application was 1,250 pages, and they wanted us to revise another 1,000 pages within a week, because that makes sense for a community that is overburdened and fighting multiple campaigns and fighting multiple issues and trying to survive COVID to do in a week. So then we were saying, what do we do now? We've done everything we can to this point. We've done lawsuits. We've done civil matters at town halls. We've done rallies. We've done marches. We've done protests. We showed up to their houses. What can we do now? And Chicago, I will always say, I am born and raised Chicago, and I love Chicago because it is a city of fighters, right? Our community for years has been exploited, but the folks that keep Chicago beautiful, or the people resisting the exploitation and the capitalism that kills Black and brown communities? And that is the beautiful part, that we didn't come up with a hunger strike because we were like, hunger strike. No, we looked at the previous actions from Chicago, because Chicago was a city of resistance, is a city of organizing. It is a city that wants to truly be equitable, but the people holding it back are the politicians that hold the strong arm of holding the status quo. But enough about that. I think we've talked, and a lot of folks on this call are like-minded, and I hope so, the support. But we said, let's look at different examples. And we looked at 2015 Diet High School hunger strike. We looked at 2001 Little Village hunger strike. And we said, okay, these actions, you know, they were successful. And we spoke to Jenna Taylor from the ward, the alderwoman, and her adventure in the hunger strike. And we said, let's do it. We prepped under a week. And then we said, we're going to do this. And we do this, we're going to starve ourselves, we're going to go to the extreme, because no one will listen to us. And when many times when the media asks us, why are you doing this to this extreme? And it's the very notion of why people collect stories. And it's because now you want to listen to us. We are literally putting our lives on the line, and now you want to listen to us. When this whole time, there's a 30-year life expectancy difference from the north side and the south side, but that's not newsworthy. When it comes to making sure our folks don't die when they're young, when there's less gun violence, and preventing, environmental racism is a clear and direct notion that there is racism. It is not to make it any less credible or any less, I want to phrase this correctly. Environmental racism doesn't take out the notion that racism exists and it's only environmental. Environmental racism is to directly say that there is racism that exists, and this is only one example of the many ways that this is being upheld. Now, we did this hunger strike, and I will tell you, and hopefully I gained my weight back, but I was known for three things. I was known for talking, sleeping, and eating. And trust me, it was such a journey that I know that we could only have accomplished with our community. There's days where your mentality and your mental state and your mental health was just destroyed. You ask yourself, what are we doing? And it just takes into question the extremes we go through. Some of our members were fainting. Some of them were just going through hot spikes in their sugars and blood pressures. And it was very daunting. It was very sad. And you some days we just cried together, and we asked ourselves, are we doing enough? And why aren't we getting the support we need? Why is it that we have Democrats having the standard, why do we have Democrats using the same legislation and policies that Republicans put into place in order to uphold those values and not change it to truly want to represent people? Why do you have Democrats wanting to point fingers at Republicans, but then them not themselves changing the policies that can uphold truly equitable and sustainable cities, right? So we were literally questioning, why are they doing this? Why aren't we changing this? And we built relations that we didn't know the impact this would have. None of us did. We went from local support growing. We hit from statewide support, well, local to city to statewide to national to international, right? And it was phenomenal. And it was phenomenal for this very reason. And I always want to say this is what takes my heart the most, right? Our youth and myself, right? We were never used to Chicago listening to the Southeast side. The Southeast side feels very isolated and apart from the city. It just does. When you live here, you're like, Chicago is it's almost as if it's a different area. You feel boarded up. We have bridges that separate us from the city all the time. So we never felt part of Chicago, but this hunger strike, these actions we've led up to has really made us feel part of these circles, made us feel more part of these organizing struggles, because at the end, we're all fighting for the same thing, to be treated with respect, to be treated how we should be treated, to have our communities invested in. So the support, and my favorite thing again is saying that our youth, whenever we're on the front page cover, we wouldn't say, oh, I'm on the front page cover. We say the Southeast side is on the front page. The Southeast side is getting its roses for the work it's doing. The Southeast side is not being recognized to making sure that we're exploiting what capitalism, imperialism, and colonization does. because we never needed this to begin with. We don't need 70 industries in order to have an economy. We can have green jobs. We can have true labor unions support these causes in order not to harm our health. So it was just amazing to receive all the support and love, and it makes such a difference. You know, you go through this trauma and you have to be interviewed and talk about this trauma, and you're living it again every single day. But it was something really beautiful, honestly, and it's a lot of love to all the folks supporting us. And again, thank you for allowing us to have this platform to talk about it. So we ended the hunger strike, unfortunately, because our health was just taking its toll. It just was, and it was very heartbreaking for us to do so. We did our final action at Lori Lightfoot's home, and we're fighting still now. Right now, if anybody wants to get involved, the way that folks can get involved is, you know, we might do, if this permit can be approved any day. So what we're doing is we're building our community. We're doing door knocking right now, and we're telling folks, hey, you know what are your thoughts about General? You don't like it? Well, join us. Right? We've always invited folks. We want to have folks, those one-on-one conversations about understanding things, right? And I think it's always about having that conversation of meeting people where they're at, and then in introducing those concepts of what does environmental justice look like in transitioning to environmental racism, to then talking about racism, to then talking about white supremacy, and then talking about how capitalism upholds it, and how police brutality upholds that, and how every single thing is meant for us to be kept down. So I'm really happy with the progress we've made, and we keep fighting. And if this permit is approved any day, what we hope for folks to do is to come out with us. We're going to have a direct action because of that. It may be violent, it may be non-violent, but we hope that you support us, because again, we do this for our survival. When we do these marches and protests and we're loud and we ask our folks to be loud and our allies to be loud, it's because we need to make sure people know this. One of the most heart-wrenching things I heard at a protest was saying, all right, I'm tired, I can go home now. And I remember I was so angry at this final protest when I heard that. I said, when you're screaming these chants with us, and when you're here with us, right, you get to go home to an area that's not contaminated. You go home and you can see the sky and you can see the moon. When I go home, when our youth go home, when our elderly go home, when they look up in the sky, they just see the smokes of cloud of contamination and pollution. So don't tell us you can go home and this is easy for you to do, because we literally do this for our survival. So again, if you want to support us, we're having a Twitter storm, I believe, tomorrow from 12 to 2 or Saturday. You can check us out and Chai Hunger Strike on Twitter, on Instagram. You'll see the details there. But again, you know, the biggest thing I'll say is truly listen to any environmental justice or environmental racism causes. Listen to folks. Listen and repeat what their demands are. Don't interpret what their demands are. Don't interpret what our demands are. Our demands are to deny the permit and to create policy for Black and Brown communities to prevent this from happening again, and to make sure that we create remediation funds to clean up all this filth that exploitation has created, and make sure that we are able to invest in it the same way we invest in the North Side. $1.3 billion. People always ask, what do you envision for your community? Well, give us $1.3 billion in subsidies, and then we'll give you the world that we want to see. And with that being said, I really appreciate the platform you've given us, and folks for listening on this call. Like, check out the trainings that are going to be coming out in order to support some of the work that Stop Gender Iron Campaign is doing. And bendiciones, and we'll open up to questions or whatever the next programming is. And again, thank you so much. It means a lot to be able to come back and share these stories.
Oh, thank you so much, Oscar. This was really wonderful to hear from you, to hear your call to action. And we want to honor all the work that everyone on the South Side is doing, and the length of time that their voices have not been heard. And so we definitely are looking forward to providing support with solidarity actions. And our group offers online NVDA trainings. And we are going to be talking about our upcoming NVDA trainings. And then what we want everyone to do is we want everyone to take this all in and think about how everybody can contribute. Everybody can there's all different forms of direct action, and it doesn't mean like getting arrested. It's the point of direct action is to cause change. The point is not to get arrested. And so with that being said, I will come back to the slides, and Ellen can show some more examples of direct action and some more information from our group.
Thank you, Ivy, and thank you, Oscar. That was so inspiring and a hard act to follow. But I want to talk a little bit about what Extinction Rebellion Chicago does in terms of training in nonviolent direct action, because we're committed to the idea that anybody can join and become an activist. And so what we try to do is welcome people to come to the training and learn how to be an activist. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what exactly is nonviolent direct action. There's a lot of kind of different terminology that sort of overlap with each other. And so we want to just kind of talk about our particular focus of nonviolent direct action. So this is a kind of an iconic example of a nonviolent direct action, which happened in Seattle in 2015, when people in kayaks and small boats blocked a shell rig in the Seattle harbor. And so it's a situation in which they were actually sort of putting their bodies on the line to stop something from happening. And so that's kind of a good way to get into the whole idea of what exactly is nonviolent direct action. So Nate, if you could go to the next slide. Or Barry, oh, thanks. So often when people think about social action and social justice, they think about things like protests, like the Women's March in 2017. And that was an incredibly powerful moment. And it brought out large numbers, and that was very, very impactful. And protests are really important, and especially when they can get large numbers of people. But direct action is a little bit different from that. So Bear, if you could go to the next slide, this is a kind of a definition and a way of distinguishing that we like to use. So a protest is when you demand something from the people in power. And so you go out into the streets and you have signs and you make demands. A direct action is when you can somehow directly affect events through non-cooperation. So as with the example of the kayaktivist, so you're sort of putting your body on the line and you're stopping something from happening by using your own power in a sense. And so that's a really sort of important feature of nonviolent direct action. So next slide, please. So what exactly is non-cooperation? What does that mean? So there's many different forms of it, and we're just going to look at a few examples. But the basic, some of the basic ones are that you break an unjust law in order to reveal the injustice. And so this is a kind of an iconic picture from the lunch counter actions during the Civil Rights Movement, in which the law was that Black and white people could not sit together at a lunch counter. And so to reveal the injustice of this law, people went and sat at the lunch counters, and you can see the kind of reaction that they're getting from the crowd around them. What's really interesting about this action is how well prepared they were for it, that they really were highly trained in sitting and not responding to what was going on around them. So that's become sort of a classic instance of a nonviolent direct action that brought attention to the injustice that they were protesting. So that's one form of non-cooperation. Another, of course, classic form of non-cooperation is a labor strike. So in a strike that you withhold your labor in order to create a crisis. So again, using your own body in order to impact a situation by not cooperating with what the authorities want you to do. So those are two really sort of good examples of thinking about, what exactly is non-cooperation in the context of nonviolent direct action. So next slide, please. What does nonviolent direct action do? It's so it can do a variety of different things. This is a picture from the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. And so one of the things that it can do is disrupt and derail and slow things down. So in this case, it was, and these pipeline actions are going on as we speak. People, again, putting their bodies on the line in order to stop an action from happening. And they've been, even if they haven't currently been, final success, they have succeeded in slowing down the action. So one of the things that these actions could do is to disrail and slow down an action. Another thing is just to claim a space, to sort of take a space, and this is from the London XR actions from 2018, to create a crisis, and so that the police have to do something. This led to many arrests. I mean, as Abby was saying, not all nonviolent direct action necessarily leads to arrest, but one of the theories is that you create a crisis by putting yourself in a situation in which you're willing to be arrested. So next slide, Barry. So why is nonviolence important? What's the significance of that in nonviolent direct action? There's a lot of debate about this, a lot of complexity to it, but just some important ideas to kind of keep in mind in planning some kind of action. So next slide. So one of the things that happens if you have a nonviolent action is that people feel safe. And so it's more likely to encourage people to, so older people, families, to participate in an action in which they feel that they're going to be safe, that there isn't going to be violence. There's obviously never a promise or a guarantee that there isn't going to be violence. But if you create a nonviolent action situation, people are going to feel safe and more likely to want to participate. But more important than that is the idea that by using nonviolence, by de-escalating rather than escalating a situation, that you create a narrative of moral high ground, that you are not going to respond with violence. This picture is from the Wall of Moms, which you might remember from Portland, Oregon, where women sort of linked arms together to protect the protesters, but doing it in a nonviolent way. So the theory is that nonviolence and, I think in many cases, the impact is that nonviolence creates sympathy for the just nature of the cause. Sympathy for the cause may erode the regime, support from key pillars, and it builds a general society-wide support for the protesters. The other thing about nonviolence, I mean, there is some evidence, it's complicated evidence, it's complicated research, as all research is, but there is some research that historically that nonviolent actions are more successful. There's a lot of complications to that, but that nonviolent actions are in general more successful in bringing about the change that they're looking for. So those are just some of the things to think about in terms of creating actions that are designed to be peaceful civil resistance. So next slide. So other benefits of nonviolent direct action, and this is something that is very important to the work of XR, and this has been part of the way that they have been developing their actions from the beginning, that nonviolent direct action requires you to appeal to the emotions and the imagination of the surrounding people. So nonviolence requires you to sort of think of a creative way to express what your demands are, to appeal to people's emotions, to appeal to their imagination. So art, music, performance, all of those things are often part of nonviolent action because they can appeal to to people at that level. Another thing about nonviolent direct action is that it can be an embodiment of some kind of regenerative culture. Mary was mentioning this earlier. One of the things that XR is trying to do is to prefigure what the culture is, to sort of model the culture that we're looking for. So a lot of XR actions involve things like planting gardens, having trees, and creating spaces in which people can interact with each other safely. So that kind of creativity in which you sort of create a space in which you're almost sort of prefiguring the future is part of XR actions. And then the final thing is this idea of the necessity defense, the idea that nonviolence can be a winning strategy because it can allow you to use this legal strategy of the necessity defense. So if we can go to the next slide, I want to just show this picture of a very famous action that took place in the spring of 2019. So just about 2 years ago. This was an action that took place in Portland, Oregon, where they built a garden over the rail tracks of the Zenith Energy Company. And so that the trains couldn't go through. So it was both, you know, sort of literally blocking an action and being non-cooperative, but doing it in a regenerative way with the use of the garden. They were arrested, the garden was destroyed, and then when they came back the next day and rebuilt the garden. The nice kind of ending to this story is that they used the necessity defense, which is the defense that, yes, we broke the law, but we did it in order to address a more pressing issue, so that the environment, the burning of fossil fuels, that is more important than the action that we took. And so it was necessary for us to take this action in order to prevent a greater harm. And the trial actually was a hung jury, but they were not convicted, and so considered the use of the necessity defense a success in that case. So, you know, what we hope to do in our trainings, and we could go to the next slide and just talk briefly about that, is to give people an opportunity to think creatively about how they can get their messages across, stop an action of some kind, be non-cooperative, in order to accomplish a goal. So if you would like to learn about and participate in nonviolent direct actions to protect the earth and support climate justice, especially on the local level, XR Chicago, we've been doing these nonviolent direct action trainings since April of 2019. And we continue to do them through the pandemic. We did online trainings. So we're restarting our series of NVDA trainings. The starting dates are going to be July 5th, July 10th, and August 7th. Each of these trainings is a 4-session training, which includes online learning, discussion, planning, and then in-person meetings in which we will practice various kinds of actions. So lock-ons, die-ins, banner drops, blockades, you know, just a variety of different kinds of actions. And then, you know, do a rehearsal of those, then come back for another online session to do reflection and further planning and sort of figuring out what will be the best strategy, and then doing an action following that. So if you're interested, please get in touch with us. We'll be opening up for registration soon, and we want this to be a really active summer. And we want people who, even people who have never been involved in activism before, to come to these trainings so that they can feel comfortable, well, maybe not comfortable, but they can feel confident in going out into the street and taking the kinds of nonviolent direct actions that will bring about the kind of change that we're all looking for. So thank you. Let's see the next slide. Yeah, so please contact us. This is our email address. Contact us on Facebook. Here's the email address from the Alliance of the Southeast. And I think that we're going to be able to follow up with all of you. I think we have all of your email addresses, so we'll be able to follow up with you with the schedule and the registration links for our NVDA trainings. So it looks like we have some time for questions.
The questions are going to have to come through the, there is a Q&A box in your screen. Feel free to use it. And the first question that somebody asked was, when is XR's next direct action? And I go, aha, direct actions are usually not announced publicly over Zoom. Due to security reasons, but my response was that we are following closely what's happening on the southeast side with the general iron struggle, and we will be answering the call to action, and we will be in solidarity with the with USA, with Southeast Environmental Task Force. And so come and talk to us and strategize with us. Now you have some information about different forms of direct action, and we can talk about what we can do to help. We really want to help. Looks like I'm seeing another question. And the question from Patrice, how does spectacle help your work? And that is going to be, I think that's a question for Ellen. Do you have a response for that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that many different kinds of actions can be successful in a variety of different kinds of ways. I think the idea of spectacle is to appeal to people's emotions so that they're not thinking about it in an abstract way, but spectacle is meant to have a visual impact, an emotional impact. So things like I know the Red Brigades are controversial for particular reasons, but the idea of people in mourning, I think, has been really powerful. Die-ins are powerful. So, what you do in a spectacle is that you are representing a complex phenomenon in a way that people can sort of grasp at a gut level. So I would say, I mean, there are lots of other ways to answer that, and I'd be curious to hear other people's answers, but mine is that it's meant to appeal to people in a way that is memorable and deep, and that we hope will spur them to join us.
Great. Thank you, Alan. The next question is, what is the best way to find out what actions are happening when? So for Extinction Rebellion Chicago, we have an email list, and we have a Facebook and an Instagram, so we can post things there. And I also recommend following the Shy Hunger Strike on Twitter hashtag. Follow Alliance of the Southeast. Oscar, do you have anything to add about how people can get informed? Let's see if I have.
Yeah. I definitely recommend Shy Hunger Strike, Alliance of the Southeast. Another political ways that we get involved, Bridges and Puentes, there's a lot of demonstrations. We're having a bike ride tomorrow in commemoration of police brutality and a lot of the folks who have died to gun violence and police brutality. Other folks is like the Southeast Environmental Task Force, not the Southeast Youth Alliance. We do a lot of different demonstrations as well with them, and we just did a tree planting last week at a local high school. United Neighbors of the 10th Ward, they do a lot of things in the political spectrum and really help create and build policy and help support policy that's really beneficial to ourselves. So those are mainly a lot of the organizations. So Bridges and Puentes, CIA, UN10, aside from ASE and CDF, and Coalition about Pep Coke.
Thank you, Oscar. Don't go anywhere because I see a question came in for you. Josh asks, what's the deal with Sue Garza? Is she not supportive of ASE's demands?
So I can't specifically speak on this question. I can't specifically answer this question due to being a nonprofit, and I can't really talk ill of any political figure. But what I will say is that when it comes to demands of General Iron, she has not spoken to us directly. She has not talked to us. She hasn't talked to any of the members. She hasn't talked to any of the hunger strikers. So it's been very disappointing. We just want accountability. We just want to make sure that folks are in support, because a vision for our community shouldn't be industry. It shouldn't be these toxic pollutants in our soil, in our water. So they haven't been in support by directly opposing them and directly having conversations with us about opposing the permits. So that's what I have to say about that. And aside from that, um, when it comes to our demands, we also have a good neighbor policy that we've been pushing. So you can also check out our website, assetchicago.org, and you can check out the good neighbor policy, which talks about what does it like a good neighbor look like, like when really pushing these policies. And she has been in support of that policy that we put together from our community visionary sessions. But again, she's failing the implementation of it again with having General Iron come into our community.
I had a question
Yeah.
live. Oscar and XR, thank you so much for being with us and for everything that you've just said and done. Oscar, you said something about how the southeast side has finally gotten to feel like part of the city, like being recognized through these actions. I was wondering if you could unpack that a little bit more and say how you would like that road to continue. Like if you were going to see the next 6 months, next couple years, how does that continue to happen?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of I got a lot of questions from my friends from the southwest side, the north side. Like everything is north to us, so it's very odd, right? We're so south that anything north of us feels north. Like anything South Chicago feels north, and that's part of our community. Hyde Park is north of us, which is odd, right? Like we're very deep southeast side. So again, our community is so south and still part of Chicago. People ask when they come to our community, this is Chicago? And we said, yes, this is still part of Chicago. We still are part of this segregation, redlining, and these terrible taxes that displace communities. So a lot of the folks here have felt for years that we have not gotten an investment. South Chicago, with the new Invest Southwest campaign that is still failing us, is the first development that is happening in South Chicago in a very long time. And it just shows that the city's priorities and actually wanting to invest in these communities that we live in, specifically the Southeast side, right? When it comes to our allies, we've asked, they're like, oh, how can we be better allies? And we've asked, just let us be part of these conversations, right? Because we live in a different area, some folks don't know we exist. It's very common that folks don't know, and that's why we're not really invited to some spaces, because people just don't know that we're around, right? If you're not involved in organizing for a while. So it's recognizing that we're here and allowing for us to be part of those discussions when it comes to racism, dismantling city council, and pushing politicians that we approve of and truly advocate for our communities, as well as other discussions about dismantling police brutality, defunding police, CPD, quote unquote, the next step, right? Abolishing police. I can't say that as a nonprofit right now, but we all know what steps are needed in order to truly liberate our communities. But yeah, it's definitely been where a theme where many youth and including myself at one point, all of us question leaving the Southeast side to another part of Chicago because we don't feel a part of Chicago, and wanting truly to be seen and truly to be part of communities that have this investment. And I think that's been the biggest challenge and biggest reward we received, is seeing our youth now feel heard, our youth now feel that they have a community that will stand up and help uplift their voices, and therefore they're going to stay because they're like, I'm going to come back if I go away for college or away for a job. I'm going to come back and build with my community when I'm older. I'm going to stay here and continue to build, because at the end of the day, the only people that are going to create change in the community are community members and our allies listening to us.
That's so amazing to hear that transformation, Oscar. I know that my small part of that is sharing, uplifting the stories, and, just being an ally. We're coming and showing folks how to take action and how to support. So thank you. And it's 7 o'clock. So I think let's have Nate just say a last words?
Yeah, that'll do it for time for us. Thank you all for being here, all of the presenters and the participants alike. The attendees are just as important. You know, we're not giving presentations to walls. The fact that you are here, whatever walk you're in, wherever you're from, whatever your interests or passions are, I'm just glad that you're here together. Because we're all stoking the fires that are going to solve this problem, the many problems that there are. So thank you to XR, Extinction Rebellion Chicago, for your part of the presentation, walking us through nonviolent direct action and how we can all get up and do something. It doesn't look like holding a sign and yelling and getting arrested all the time. It can be a whole variety of things, and XR shows that really well. And Oscar showed us, obviously, a whole nother side of that. Bravo on the hunger strike, man. I cannot believe your courage and your strength through that fight. And I hope that we will be crossing paths very soon and continuously, and keeping those keeping them out, man. Stop General Irons, deny the permit. Thank you, everybody. Key in on the fights and do well out there. Check out the rest of this express.org's events. We've still got a couple left this weekend. They're all free. There's a poetry slam, a super cool closing ceremony pageant. That's the 6thfest.org. We'll see you down the road.
All right, take care, folks. Bendiciones. Bye.